What's up, everybody? Welcome to Stacking the Box College Football Edition. I'm your host, Reed Wallach. Joined, as always, every Wednesday is my co-host, Cody Williams. Cody, how's it going, man? Happy week 9. We're I think, turning the corner. This is like home stretch time.
Yeah, man. It's I feel like it's gone by really quickly. Like a lot's happened, but I feel like there's so much more that needs to happen that it just feels like it's flown by. So, but I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing all right. Picks again. I think some unfair outcomes that I think we deserve a few more winners there, which we will get into. But yeah, everything's good. And you make a good point about we're about to hit November. It's last week in October, about to hit November. And it still feels like there's a few more things that we need to get over before we really know a lot about these teams at the top. We know a lot about the Heisman Trophy race, the college football playoff, conference championships. It feels like we have little samplings of big games, tentpole events throughout the season that it feels like, though, we just keep pushing. Okay, well, we'll learn again in a few weeks when so-and-so plays so-and-so. This result, but we still got to see what happens in 2 weeks when this team goes on the road or something. And it feels like there's a lot still to be said, or a lot to still figure out, as you just said.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, probably infamously, I've been doing that with Ohio State with every big game that they played all season, starting to believe a little bit in the Buckeyes. But, on a more general level, I just think that there are a lot of these contenders. Like you look at Georgia, you look at Michigan, who we're going to talk more about Michigan in just a second. But, they haven't played anyone of note. Like Michigan's best win is probably Rutgers. We're not talking about a tremendous strength of schedule. And Georgia, they have wins over Kentucky, wins over Auburn, but they haven't truly been tested by one of these elite teams. So there's a lot of these teams still have a lot left to prove over this final stretch.
Yeah, that's a good segue though into the biggest story in college football. No, it's not Colorado and Deion Sanders anymore. It is Michigan's sign stealing sting operation, whatever you want to call it. We now have there's a Michigan manifesto out there that is being started. The reports are starting to circulate around the internet. So we're getting into what's going on with Michigan and also where Michigan stands in the national hierarchy. But before we do that, got to tell you about our good friends over at DraftKings and this promotion they are running this football season. You don't want to miss it. New users can place a $5 first bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. And you will also be rewarded with a separate, no sweat, single game parlay every day you opt in. This is all you have to do. All you have to do is sign up with our code STB, that stands for Stacking the Box. Using our code again, STB, not only gets you these bonuses, but it also helps support the podcast. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use the code STB the same time you opt in. Code STB maximizes your first bet in parlays. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 and present and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode descriptions for the full terms of the offer below and to see if you qualify. Okay, so Michigan. I don't know how much we need to get into this, but It's obviously the biggest story in college football right now. In short, a low-ranking assistant on the Michigan football staff had been traveling to future opponents, Big Ten opponents, SEC opponents. I believe that might be it. ACC opponents, maybe it was Clemson too.
Pac-12
Pac-12 as well. And was buying tickets on his own dime, Venmoing out as us youngins do nowadays, going to these games and essentially scouting the opponents' signals, reads, because in college football, different than the NFL, there is no communication from coach to player inside the helmet. Everything is done sideline, and you can steal signs. It's been this is not a new thing.
No.
What is new to this and what makes it so unique and such for right now, at least a big deal, is that to our knowledge, we have not seen a team go to this length of sending an assistant or going on your own dime and bringing the information back. Sending an assistant to these games, blatantly stealing the signs, bringing them back, and then using that information. So, Cody, I'll start with you. What I guess 1 to 10 big deal meter for the rest of this season is?
Ooh, for the rest of the season, I'd probably go a 2. because I really
I
don't.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like for this season, like I think it's only a 2 because people aren't going to stop talking about it, particularly in the Big Ten, particularly Ohio State fans. Like they're not going to let this stuff go. But that's the only reason I think it's a 2. Like this season, I don't think it has any effect on this Michigan team. Like, sure, you could argue that it may have effect on the X's and O's if they're still using this, like still using, like if teams haven't changed up their signals and aren't combating this. But at the same time, like the investigation's probably not going to be over until the end of this season, if I had to guess. Just knowing how NCAA investigations go, it's probably not going to be over until the end of this season. So any repercussions aren't going to be handed down until until the offseason at the earliest. And so this season, I just don't see it really having an effect other than it being, the news story that everyone's talking about.
I agree. I was going to say a 3, but 2. I think the only thing is this season, maybe it's a distraction.
Yeah.
It's next year or whenever this investigation ends that ultimately I think this ends with Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan, and this is kind of it for them. This is where Michigan, I assume in their ideal world, they get over the hump and they win the national championship, and then Jim Harbaugh goes back to the NFL or takes some sort of coaching job, executive job, and eventually in a few years they finish their investigation and hand Michigan, whether it's like vacate wins or a fine or something or another. So to me, I think that this is a little overblown in the short term, especially with at least like what I'm reading with this report. Obviously, it's not great, and I'm not like endorsing that they were cheating or something. I'm seeing this compared to the Houston Astros thing. It seems a little. I don't think it's that as big of a deal. But now, like, there's a new report from Richard Johnson of Sports Illustrated saying this guy Connor Stallions, who is a former Marine, obsessed with Michigan, literally had a 600-page document called the Michigan Manifesto about how he and a group of people wanted to take over the Michigan program and lead them to the promised land. Whether this was all pre-orchestrated as a fall guy, it seems like it's very easy though for Michigan to pin this on just him and keep everyone else insulated from the issue. And in the short term, at least, it's it's a few annoying questions here and there, but like, to me, I don't think this is as big of a deal as people are doing. And listen, I don't think that this is like blatant cheating. This goes on everywhere. This goes on by every team. There's all some sort of like sign stealing. Again, this is like a little much.
The videotaping is like the one element here that's like
it's
the
alleged cheating. No, it's not cheating. Like you still have to go out there and defend it. You still, so
exactly.
I don't think this is like. Cheating. It's not like they were taking steroids or they were like getting the play. It's not like they had the play sheet. Like if this guy was going into the locker room and stealing something, that's obviously different. Like this is all part of the game, and it even says in the NCAA rules, like this is kind of gamesmanship. Like obviously this is maybe on like the gray area of breaking that rule.
Yeah,
but like to me, this is a little overblown and. I think witch hunt is almost too strong, but it does feel like there's a lot of people now kind of jumping in on this, like to see the first of all, the top team this year, but also like getting a few jabs at Harbaugh, like on his way down or, out while like all these reports are coming out.
No, 100%. And going to your Astros point about like the severity of what's happening here at Michigan, we're actually I'm going to tie Colorado into this a little bit. Deion Sanders was asked about it yesterday. I don't know if you saw his quotes, but he basically said, everyone's trying to get an edge. But at the end of the day, in football, you have to go out there and still stop the play. Like you can know I'm running a sweep to the left, but if your linebacker can't tackle my running back, it does not matter. And where, you liken it to like the Astros, if a professional hitter knows that a curveball is coming, he's going to tattoo that baseball most of the time. So it's just
on it and just tee off. Yeah.
100%. And Deion Sanders is uniquely qualified to answer that question, considering he played in both the NFL and Major League Baseball. Like he's probably the most important figure to ask that question to, because he knows the difference in the severity of those two things. So
completely agree.
Yeah. So I think Deion actually offered a lot of insight into how severe we should be taking this Michigan thing. And Michigan still has to go out there and make the play, and they've obviously been doing that at a high level.
Yeah, I think obviously it's never a good look, obvious's, but I feel like this is more the news cycle getting swept up in something that's probably not as big of a deal. And also it seems like it's starting to turn, in my opinion, into more around this guy Connor Stallions more than anything else, that he's like kind of this like next level Michigan fanatic.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like a movie.
It really does.
Yeah, it doesn't sound real. It sounds like something like Hollywood scriptwriters would put in there.
So let's talk more about Michigan, the team, though, because they go to East Lansing and to the surprise of nobody, dispose of Michigan State 49-0. Again, another just chalk it up, another blowout win. They're winning by like an average margin of like 38, I think, in Big Ten play, something like that.
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned Michigan hasn't played anybody. We still don't really know how it will go when they travel to Happy Valley in a few weeks, when they play Ohio State in the final game of the season. That being said, and the last few weeks I've come on the show and I've said, I think Michigan is the best team in the country. I think that they are far and away the best, and I think that they're going to ultimately win the national championship. To me, yes, they have an easy schedule, but there is something unique about watching a team week in and week out just absolutely blow the doors off their opponents, because a bunch of great teams have sleepy spots. A bunch of great teams kind of take their foot off the gas and they have to go on the road and they struggle to get margin, and a few picks go the other way or a penalty or something like that, missed kicks. Michigan is absolutely beating the brakes off these teams. And I think that that is a tip of the cap to how dominant this team is. And look, maybe they struggle against Penn State and they lose that game, and all of a sudden the narrative around Michigan is a little bit different. But to me, the way I see it, this is a sign of one of the great teams in, I don't know about recent memory, but season long, just in a vacuum. This is one of the most dominant teams we're going to see. And I think, honestly, when we get to that Penn State and Ohio State game, I think they're going to look the part as well and get through those games and, ultimately run the table in the regular season, because I think that the gap is that wide between Michigan and all the teams on the schedule this year.
I completely agree with you. I mean, one of the reasons we're talking about this is I said that in our pre-show meeting, I said that my big takeaway from Penn State, Ohio State last week was that Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten, by far, because I watched those two teams and for much of that game, neither team could move the ball consistently. It wasn't until Ohio State, as they do, unlock the cheat code of get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. 100 times in this game.
Maserati Marv.
Oh my God! Please, Gus Johnson, please retire from the nickname business. My God, if I had to hear that one more time. And I mean, it didn't help that he had 18 receptions or something ridiculous. It was just constant. But I mean, Michigan, like you said, they haven't played anyone. They played, I think, two teams that that are trending towards bowl eligibility right now. But the way that they've dominated on both sides of the ball, it's not just been, we watched Penn State dominate a lot of teams coming into before last week, and it was okay, but is the offense good? Because we know the defense is top tier, and it proved it's still a very good defense, but the offense does have problems. But Michigan's doing it on both sides of the ball, and they're doing it in multifaceted ways. They're stopping different styles of offense defensively, and they're also attacking with J.J. McCarthy and also with the run game with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. This team can beat you in so many different ways, and they've been doing it against this inferior competition.
I completely agree. And before we talk about maybe the catalyst for Michigan's improvement, scores this season: beat ECU 30-3. Beat UNLV 35-7. Beat Bowling Green 31-6. Beat Rutgers 31-7. Beat Nebraska on the road 45-7. Won at Minnesota 52-10. Beat Indiana 52-7. And Indiana's only touchdown was on a trick play in the first quarter. And they went to Michigan State and won 49-0. I mean, this is just absolutely next level domination from the Wolverines. I don't care what the competition is. To have your foot on the pedal like that is, I think, a sign of dominance that we rarely see in college football. Also, while Michigan was putting on the finishing touches of beating Michigan State, Washington was kicking off their game at home against Arizona State. Last week, Michael Penix became the odds-on, or I guess now a week and a half ago or so, Michael Penix Jr. became the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. I believe we talked about it on this show that I was skeptical that was going to play out and that he should, I think it was an overreaction to as someone was honking, maybe an agreement or disagreement with me. I think Michael Penix Jr., it was a reaction to the Oregon win, but I didn't really believe in that. I was of the belief that JJ McCarthy things were setting up for JJ McCarthy to rise to the top. I think it happened a little bit faster than some people had expected because Washington doesn't score an offensive touchdown against lowly Arizona State. Maybe should have lost if Arizona State had a kicker. Arizona State's kicker missed like 3 short field goals, and Arizona State had to end up going for it a bunch. Ended up throwing a pick 6 on one of those 4th downs. So now JJ McCarthy is the Heisman Trophy favorite. Wouldn't say it's a done deal, of course, but I do think if Michigan is going to run the table, gonna be tough to take him down. I know he doesn't have the gaudy stats like a Jaden Daniels or a Michael Penix have. Those are the 2nd and 3rd choices. But McCarthy's efficiency numbers are insane. We were just talking about how dominant Michigan is. If Michigan gets them the 2 crowning wins of beating 2, I think playoff-worthy teams this year, worthy of conversation around it, even if the resume doesn't stack up just talent-wise. Like Penn State to me is still like a top 10 team in the country, top 15 team in the country.
Absolutely.
You get those 2 wins, to me, this is McCarthy's reward to lose. I just think the odds movement happened a little bit faster than I expected because I didn't know if Washington was going to lay a clunker like that so fast. But I agree completely with the odds move.
No, 100%. And I think the point that you're making about the odds moving faster than we expected is actually works so much in McCarthy's favor too, because the way the schedule's set up, it was always going to be a late push with 2 November games against Penn State and Ohio State. Like those are his chances for quote unquote Heisman moments, to really like leave a lasting impression. And for him to already be the favorite going into those games, he has nothing but like opportunity and green grass ahead of him. And like you look at, you look at the people behind him, like Penix doesn't necessarily have those, like they still have some marquee games on the schedule, but
they're going to lose though. They're going to lose a game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was on the fence last week when we talked about it, but after seeing, how I think my takeaway from that Washington game was that team is more banged up than I think that we realize. On the offensive line, they look banged up. Penix doesn't look 100% right now. Like he's not moving at 100%. So like, I definitely think they're trending towards a loss. But then, like, you look at Jaden Daniels, he has the Alabama game, which could be a feather in his cap if he dominates that Alabama defense and keeps putting up the numbers that he's been putting up. But LSU is still a 2-loss team. LSU doesn't really have an opportunity after the Alabama game to do that, whereas J.J. McCarthy has 2 opportunities in those marquee spots to really, like, put a stamp on this Heisman campaign.
Yeah, McCarthy's numbers pale in comparison to someone like Jaden Daniels. But McCarthy's numbers on the year, 1,799 passing yards, completing 78% of his passes, 3 interceptions, also has 3 touchdowns on the ground.
So, weren't all 3 picks in one game too?
Yeah, against Bowling Green, which is wild to say. But so JJ McCarthy is your Heisman betting favorite. I'm in New York, so I don't have the odds readily available. Cody, I don't know if you want to just rattle off the odds right now, if you can pull them up quickly, but McCarthy is the betting favorite. Penix and Daniels right behind him, and then further down the pack, but I guess still within shouting distance if things break their way, you have guys like Dylan Gabriel, Bo Nix if they run the table. Carson Beck maybe has an opportunity to throw his hat into the ring depending on how they do against Florida, which we're going to talk in a little bit. Cody, if you have the odds up, we kind of share.
I do not have the odds up. I apologize. Okay. I was trying to get them.
Oh, good. I could keep kind of filibustering if you want to pull them up just so we could share.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, Caleb obviously done it. The paths to victory are starting to shrink for a lot of people. Whereas, okay, if Washington runs the table and they have a quarterback like Michael Penix with his numbers, he has a path to winning. JJ McCarthy, he would be the quarterback of the dominant team. He has a path. Jaden Daniels would have like the statistical case. Yeah. After that, it becomes a little bit more difficult to see some of these quarterbacks hanging on to the conversation. So the race is starting to shrink quite a bit.
Yeah, all right. So I have the odds. J.J. McCarthy's the favorite, as mentioned, plus 250. Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix at plus 300. Then it's a huge gap. And then you've got Dylan Gabriel, Bo Nix, and Jordan Travis all at plus 1,200. Marvin Harrison Jr. is actually the next one on the board at plus 2,000. Carson Beck with a little dark horse at plus 3,000. Those odds are shrinking. And then we get down to like Quinn Ewers, Drake May, all gone. Plus 5,000 or above. But yeah, they're gone. That's not in the conversation anymore.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's start our week 9 preview. Again, you like any of these picks, use the code STB, stands for Stacking the Box, at DraftKings. You will get $200 in bonus bets on your first $5 wager and single game parlays for the rest of the football season every single day. All right. 2-4 last week for yours truly. 4-2 for Cody. We're both still way under 500 as we hit the stretch run, but maybe we could turn it around. I lead Cody by a single game now after my second straight losing week. I'm 25-32-1. Cody 24-33-1. I just want to say on my picks, like reviewing them from last week, I think I was in the right spot. We were on the under in Alabama, Tennessee together. Mm-hmm. I was on the under in Duke, Florida State, and I think not the same exact thing, but the same type of thing happened in each game that led to both bets losing. I projected both favorites to kind of vice grip the opponent and kind of sit on the ball a little bit, have more of a ball control type game. Tennessee flies down the field, scores on the first drive. Bama goes 3 and out. They have a turnover. Tennessee gets up 13-0. That to me threw the game out of whack, where Alabama needed to press more than I believed that it might when I was thinking the game. I didn't think they were going to have to. Not to mention, the total still almost got there if it wasn't for a Joe Milton fumble on a sack in the late fourth quarter for a scoop and score for Alabama. So I still think that was the right bet. Florida State, Duke. Florida State doesn't get 2 fourth downs in their own territory in the first quarter and throw a pick 6 to fall behind. And then the game gets sideways in the fourth quarter when Riley Leonard goes down. But again, Duke hardly scored in that game. They got 20 points and 7 on a pick 6. So and they scored on a 50-yard broken play. So I think that the bet was there. The correct bet was there. It was more that, the underdog getting ahead early kind of threw the game script that I anticipated out of whack. What did you think on your picks? You went 4-2.
Well, so I actually want to speak on the Duke pick real quick. Also, like at the time that you made that pick, we didn't know Riley Leonard was playing. Like it was unconfirmed.
He didn't look good though. So like
that's what I'm saying. I was
going to say chance. I still
I was going to say Mike Elko should not have played him. He didn't look good. He didn't look healthy. And now they have a game against Louisville where they might not have Riley Leonard again. Now they're really putting their ACC chances in jeopardy. So like, I think it was a bad decision. I think I'm with you that it was a good bet by you. I mean, I had a decent week. Air Force, Navy, and Iowa unders were easy money.
Those were cash.
Yeah. The Penn State, I had Penn State plus 4.5. That's just a misread on the offense on my part. Like that's a bad bet on my part. So I can't, say anything about that though. And also a misread of the Ohio State defense. Like if anything about Ohio State, I have confidence in, it's that defense is one of the probably 5 best in the country. That unit is good. And I underrated that. And then I was same with you when we were on the under for Alabama, Tennessee together. Those are my 2 misses, were the 2 marquee games of the week. But I'm like, we saw the true colors of Tennessee in the second half of that game when they got held scoreless. And the fact that they got 20 points in the first half pretty flukishly, like that just hurt and it killed us.
Yeah. Again, Tennessee, I didn't have one serious drive in the second half. Tennessee's whole game, first drive, scripted. Joe Milton, I'll give him credit, doubted that he could throw it, but threw like a 40-yard bomb to squirrel right. Great catch, touchdown.
That's the best Joe Milton throw I've ever seen.
Yeah. 2 short fields for Tennessee. Got 2 field goals even. Then right before the half, he hits another 40-yard pass that kind of jumpstarts a touchdown drive. And then that was pretty much it for Tennessee. So I think we made the right bet. It just didn't play out in our favor. But no more talk about last week. We're on to this week. We're on to week 9. We're going to run with the same kind of theme as last week, same topics. We're going to start with our favorite total. Cody, where are you looking?
I'm going to BYU, Texas, and I'm taking the under 50.5 in this game. Obviously, the big narrative is Quinn Ewers sprained AC joint in his right shoulder. He suffered last week in the win against Houston, a close win that had me worried about all my faith in Texas. But that's the big story. But I think coming into this game, the inclination because of that is going to be to the under. But the more I dug into the numbers, the more I really like the pick, regardless of the situation. BYU's offense with Keaton Slovis and whoever's at quarterback is absolutely horrendous. They rank 129th in the country in success rate, and they're going up against a top 15 defense in success rate with Texas. And with Ewers out, I expect that the Texas offense is going to be a lot more reliant on the run, particularly with Malik Murphy, who is much more of a dual threat quarterback than Quinn Ewers. So that's going to keep the clock running. But I also think that with Malik Murphy making his first start, with him having limited experience, and with Sark honestly having most likely having to coach like a real heavy game plan, game script game for Murphy. I think that they're going to be fine to just get like a 2-touchdown lead and kind of pack it in. And I think this defense is good enough to limit everything BYU is going to do. So I think to get to over this total, Texas would have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And I don't think they have like the inclination or desire to do that in this game. So that's why I like the under in this.
BYU sucks. Like just
yes.
point blank. They're terrible. How are they 5-2? Give me a break. Let's go back through their wins. I want to say they've been outgained in like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
And the last few weeks, they played Texas Tech last week, who's starting a true freshman quarterback, third stringer. They got smoked by TCU on their backup, they got annihilated by Kansas State. So what does that say about BYU? And they played another backup too. As I try to scramble to bring up their schedule. I completely agree with you though on Texas. I've also seen when they've been big favorites this year, they haven't shown the killer instinct that we have thought that they had. And I forget that there's like a backup in now, which only helps your case. But Texas kind of played with its food a little bit. I do wonder if there's a sense that Alabama game was really like that's the peak, and it's not like sustained peak. That is like, all right, we're getting this one. We are beating Alabama. We're about to give it all into that. And then the rest, not that they're not good, not that they're not talented, but that was just like a really, really big scheduled effort. Another big push against Oklahoma. But maybe this offense it's not clicking like many had expected before the season. And maybe that's what's going to keep this team out of the college football playoff is that on paper it looks nice, but the team is more just like very good instead of great.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think that's kind of a Sark problem that we've seen over the years. Like big game Sark is a thing. Like he shows up, he has his teams ready for big games, and it's the 11 other games or the 10 other games on the schedule where you're like, okay, what are you doing there, fella? Like, I'm not sure you're like getting this team ready to play an entire regular season. It's just 1 or 2 games in the regular season.
Really quick on BYU before I do have my pick. So against Arkansas, BYU, they won 38-31. Was outgained in the game 424-281. Again, they won on the road against Arkansas. That was before Arkansas really fell off too. They lose to Kansas. They beat Cincinnati on a Friday night game that they were trailing. In that game, Cincinnati outgained BYU 498-295. BYU, they also struggled to score on Sam Houston State, who still hasn't won a game. They won 14-0 in that game. And then they got smoked by TCU, and then they beat Texas Tech last week with a third-string quarterback. So BYU, real fraudulent. Sticking in the Big 12, though, my favorite bet, total bet. I'm going to go West Virginia, UCF over 59. Game is going to be at UCF, 12 o'clock kick. West Virginia off their bye. They've had a lot of defensive injuries. Got off to a really hot start, 4-2. Since then, allowed 41 to Houston on the road and then 48 to Oklahoma State at home. I think this defense got off to a hot start and starting to trend in the wrong direction as we get into the later parts of this year. Meanwhile, on the other side, UCF, even with all their quarterback injuries, top 15 in EPA per rush this year. Had John Reese Plumlee healthy last week. They nearly took down Oklahoma on the road, scored 29 points there. The defense for UCF has been a real bugaboo this year, all year. I mean, this team is bottom 5 in EPA per rush allowed. And I like what I've seen from this West Virginia offense. I think Garrett Green has developed nicely, dual threat. We've seen tight ends able to get down the field as well for West Virginia. I just think bunch of points here. You look at UCF's games this year, 31-29 against Oklahoma, 51-22 against Kansas, where KU was able to get a bunch of explosives. UCF probably should have scored more in that game too. They blow the game against Baylor where they score 35. They end up letting like 28 up in the fourth. 44-31 loss to Kansas State. They put up 48 against FCS Villanova. And then they play at Boise State, and the final score was 18-16. But UCF scored on like 1 of 5 red zone chances. Like they should have they had like 500 yards of total offense. So I think there's going to be points left and right. I think West Virginia, these last 2 weeks are like more indicative of what this team is going to look like. So over 59, it's a fairly high scoring game, but I think each team can get into the end zone at least 4 times and then a little bit extra on top of that. So West Va, UCF over 59, my favorite total this week.
No, I love this because another factor that I'm looking at with this game and that plays to the over is I think both of these quarterbacks, though they're impressive in what they do, like they play their schemes really well, like they handle that really well. They're turnover prone a little bit when they have to throw the ball. And I think that could lead to short fields for both of these offenses, which I have a lot of faith in generally. So, like, I think if you're looking at short fields, that's just going to add more to the total. So, yeah, I mean, I love this.
Yeah, something I'm keeping an eye on. I feel like the middle of the Big 12, like your like the middle bottom, like your Oklahoma States, your like these two, West Virginia, UCF, Kansas, even
Iowa
Kansas
State.
State. Yeah, I think big over energy from those
Oh, yeah.
teams.
It's
I
traditional Big
think
12. That's what we
I
need.
think no, but like it hasn't been like that though. The
No,
past
it
like few
hasn't.
years has been a lot of defense. I feel like we're gonna see a lot of like drunk backyard football going forward into like the later stage of the season. I think that you're gonna see pass rate way up, teams playing faster, teams playing much more aggressive because the Big 12 title race is like quickly, and it always has been, but it's quickly becoming a two-ish team race. Maybe Kansas State throws their name in there. Maybe Oklahoma State stays hot and gets in there. But pretty much it's Oklahoma, Texas, and then everybody else. I think the other teams are going to start acting much more aggressive, going to be pressing a little bit more. You're going to see broken plays. You're going to see big plays, and you're going to see a lot of points. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on. A lot of these teams I have circled as over teams, like Iowa State, Baylor this week. I think that's an over game. Who else are playing this week in the Big 12? Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, that could be a particularly higher scoring game, just given where Cincinnati is and how aggressive they're probably going to be drawing dead this season. Kansas, Oklahoma, I think Kansas can try and push the pace and get that into a higher scoring game. So I think Big 12 overs might be a thing as we get into November, obviously weather pending.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, just don't take a BYU over because their offense is fraudulent. So, and that's what we've learned today.
All right, let's move on. Kind of a lower key slate, I think, relative to some of the past few weeks, but it is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party with Georgia taking on Florida in Jacksonville, neutral site. Both teams coming off the bye. Georgia, a 14.5-point favorite. Total now at 46.5. Cody, how do you see it? First game without Brock Bowers.
Yeah, so I'm actually, this might be counterintuitive with it being the first game without Brock Bowers, but I'm taking Georgia first half -7.5. We talked last week when we were discussing the Brock Bowers injury, or maybe it was the week before. I don't know. At some point, we talked about the Brock Bowers injury. And in talking about that, we talked about the possibility of Georgia's offense finding more of an identity, finding more balance, and being more reliable by putting more on Carson Beck's shoulders. And I think that the timing of the Brock Bowers injury could not have been worse for Florida. It happened in the bye week. They've had an entire 2-week stretch to get things ready in that capacity to reshape this offense a little bit without number 19 out there. And when you start to dig into the numbers with how Florida has played in terms of conference play, in terms of Power 5 competition, it gets a little ugly for them. They're 75th in the country in yards allowed in conference play this season. Georgia, contrarily, ranks 5th offensively in yards per game in conference play. And Georgia's also top 20 in EPA per play in both the run and in the passing game. So this offense has been moving efficiently, and I understand the Brock Bowers injury throws a wrench into that, but I still think it's going to be able to move efficiently. And I think the big key when I look at, early game script type stuff is Georgia ranks 13th in explosive plays of 20-plus yards, while Florida ranks 71st, and Georgia's defense ranks 3rd. I think Georgia is able to get some explosives early in this game and really set the tone without Brock Bowers. I think this is a statement game for them, obviously a rivalry game. We saw what they did against Kentucky in their biggest rivalry-type game to this point. I know Auburn is Auburn. Like, they're not I don't think they took that game seriously, even though it is the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Just because Auburn is so hapless most of the time offensively. And I think that's why they almost got caught. But I think in this game that Kirby has these guys ready, and I think they come out and make a statement without Brock Bowers in the first half.
Yeah, I feel like we're looking at this game kind of similarly. First, I think it's funny. I feel like every SEC matchup, there's always some nicknames / like really old rivalry thing between every school.
It's not as bad as the Big Ten. Don't lie.
No, the Big Ten has stupid trophy names, but like the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Like every time like SEC teams get together, it's like a lot of bad blood between these two programs. Like, no love lost here between like random schools who like Arkansas like travels to face Georgia. It's like, oh, these teams used to go at it in the 80s. Like these two teams do not like each other. It's I feel like it's so random. But I do agree with you. I think Florida's defense, their biggest issue, explosive play defense. Outside the top 100 in both explosive pass and run defense. This was really shown against Kentucky, where Ray Davis rushed for like over 200 yards, and Kentucky absolutely demolished Florida. Georgia, I feel like we've been on this for a while all season. We've been saying we actually think Carson Beck's pretty good. They just need to let him loose a little bit, let the training wheels off. It's like the first half is like, all right, we're going to waste away drives by running it 3 straight times. And then when it's time for Carson Beck to start chucking it around the field, he does it pretty well.
And Georgia wins the game. Crazy.
And Georgia, yeah. Even without Brock Bowers, I do think it's another week for Ladd McConkey to get healthy. Maybe they could get Dominic Lovett involved. I think Georgia's going to be able to open up the passing game quite a bit against the Florida secondary that I think is a little underwhelming. I think Florida's front seven is pretty solid, actually. I think it's the back seven that is a bit of a concern. That being said, as a Wisconsin graduate and someone who made a lot of fun of Florida for taking Graham Mertz in the portal, Graham Mertz has been pretty good this year. I will say that. I've been impressed with Graham Mertz. I was very impressed against South Carolina. Granted, South Carolina, a terrible defense, but Graham Mertz passed for 423 yards in that game and led them to victory, down 10 in the fourth quarter. He only has one turnover-worthy play this season, according to the PFF. I know a lot of that is scheme dependent. Graham Mertz doesn't throw the ball downfield whatsoever, so maybe Georgia could bait him into a few if he gets into a negative game script. That being said, almost every team this year has been able to score on Georgia somehow, some way. Yeah. You know, you look at Vanderbilt got to 20, UAB got to 21, Kentucky got smoked, they got 13, but Georgia did all the heavy lifting there. They got to 51. I think it's interesting that Georgia, they don't have a high sack rate. They only have 12 sacks on the year. Of course, they get a lot of pressure, but they haven't been getting home a lot. They also have allowed a touchdown on 73% of red zone opportunities for the opponent. So when teams get in close, they're turning those into 6. And with a low total like 46.5, that makes me want to go over. So that's my favorite bet in this one. I like the over. I think Georgia takes care of business, but I think Florida's going to be able to do just enough to make this scoreline look competitive.
Yeah.
Maybe lose by like 17. But I think Georgia's going to be able to get to a point that Florida cannot hang, where Georgia's into like the 30s. But I think Florida's going to do enough to push this one into the mid-50s. I make this like 51.5. I think like a 34-17 final makes a lot of sense here. Something of that nature. Maybe it's like 46.5, something like 31-20. I think teams have shown an ability to score on Georgia. Even Auburn, who couldn't move the ball at all, hit a few big run plays, whether it was a quarterback design run or not. That worked, got them to the scoring position, and they scored. So I think over is my best bet here. Georgia, a sneaky over team this year.
No, I like that play a lot. And I think we're seeing the game the same way, just taking different angles to get there. Like, I don't think Georgia's offense has it. If they come out the way I expect them to without Brock Bowers, like putting more on Carson Beck's shoulders, asking him to cook right away, like, I don't think Georgia's going to have a lot of trouble scoring in this game. And I think they're like you said, Graham Mertz and this Florida offense have been playing much better than I think I, or most people who had watched Graham Mertz and Madison expected them to. And so, like, I don't think Georgia's going to have the luxury to just like sit on the football and like stop scoring. Like, I think an under or the over here is a pretty easy play.
Yeah. I just think, it's a little too low for my liking. Yeah. All right. Next marquee game I want to talk about, Oregon, Utah. Utah pulls out another victory against USC. One of the more compelling games of the season, I thought, just with like all the emotions flying there. Really gutty effort from Utah, not to be surprised. They are now back home from the confines of Rice Eccles. They're now hosting, for I think both of our money, the best team in the Pac-12. That's Oregon. Oregon enters as a 6.5-point favorite. Oregon avoided a little slow start, but they take care of business against Washington State. Oregon, a few guys were held out, maybe precautionary reasons, especially in the secondary. So maybe Washington State was able to score a few cheapies that way. Utah, it's pretty much an all run first offense. They are now moving guys from the defense over to the offense to try and mask some of those injuries and leaving their defense a little bit more vulnerable. I mean, Utah, it's a gritty effort, but Cam Rising finally ruled out for the year. I think we all kind of realized that was where this was going. Kuthi also out for the year, the tight end. So Utah's going to try and just make do with Braxton Barnes and this makeshift Utah offense. Cody, how do you see this one?
So I see this one. I am staying away from a side on either part of this because Utah is one of the most impossible teams in the world for me to bet on against with. It just doesn't matter. So I'm going actually Oregon team total under 28.5 in this game. So looking back at the schedule that Oregon's played to this point, they have not played a defense that ranks top 40 in EPA per play this season. Utah's number 2 in the country defensively in EPA per play. It's by far the toughest defense that the Ducks have seen. And we know that with that rush first offense that Utah has, they're going to slow the game down. So when I look at pace and I look at the defense that is going to match up well with what Oregon wants to do, which Oregon has been an efficient offense, but they haven't been tested in terms of defense. And like we've seen them put up points, but against the better competition they played, you look at a Washington, who is the best defense they played. I think they're 42nd in EPA per play this season defensively. They only put up 33 points. Probably should have been 36. Sorry, Reed. But the Ducks haven't played this, and now we're in Rice-Eccles Stadium, which is one of the toughest road environments to play in. Bo Nix has traditionally struggled on the road in these types of environments, particularly when he's playing against a defense the caliber of this Utah team. I think Oregon wins this game. I think they may even cover, but I don't think that they're going to blow the doors off of this Utes defense. And so asking them to score 4 touchdowns or fewer, I'm going to take that bet.
Got to go head to head with you here. It's getting close in the standings. I gotta separate a little bit. I'm gonna go Oregon team total over 28.5. Let's see if the Ducks can get it back from me after they land on the number 33 against Washington.
That key number, man, it got you.
Yeah. I think USC should have won that game against Utah. I think they abandoned the run way too early in that game. Utah's rush defense is quietly not very good anymore. I think the injuries are really starting to take a toll. According to PFF, Utah ranks 115th in rush defense grading. I know that they play hard-nosed football, but I think we're starting to see some cracks in Utah, and they haven't been able to hold up against physical teams. Oregon State kind of bullied them at home, or Utah's on the road. They bullied them. Now, I know they're at home. Oregon, number 1 in success rate, number 1 in offensive line yards. I don't think Bo Nix is going to have to do all that much because they have such a good rush game with Jones and Bucky Irving. And if necessary, I mean, Sloan Vaki is now playing running back. He was their stud safety. He's not playing running back because that's how banged up they are. I know there's going to be shots over the top for Oregon. I honestly think Oregon is so far better than USC and more complete than USC. And I think they're going to come out with a good game plan. I just think that they kind of steamroll Utah and they just kind of beat them into submission. And, this is an Oregon defense that's gotten pressure this year. Maybe Barnes makes a mistake and all of a sudden they fall behind. I know Utah, the numbers look great. The offense has been so poor, though, that I don't know if it's going to hold up. I mean, you're talking about when they went to Oregon State, 7 points.
Yeah.
Against UCLA, they scored 14, and they got 1 on the first play of the game, a pick 6. Florida, first play of the game, big bomb play. USC, offense kind of turtled there in the fourth quarter, including throwing a pick 6. I know they're at home, and I know that crowd gets rowdy. I just feel like Oregon is such a cut above. I think they take care of business here, and I think they fly over the total. I think that this one gets a little out of hand. I know it's on the road, so going against the Rice-Eccles voodoo, but head-to-head, I had to take my chance here.
Hey, I like it. I mean, like I said to start off my pick, we talked about it in the pre-show meeting yesterday too. Like, we don't know how to bet this game because these two, we know Oregon's the better team, but Utah just mucks things up so much that you just never know what you're going to get from a game. And I could see it going either way. I like the underside, but if it went over, it wouldn't shock me. It just wouldn't shock me because it's Utah football and you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, we'll see. Oregon obviously both teams need this one for Pac-12 championship possibilities. All right, let's go to the primetime slate. Handful of games in this window should be interesting while everyone's settling in for Saturday night. Where are you looking, Cody? Again, this is like the 7:30 window.
Yeah, so I'm staying in the Pac-12, and I'm laying the points with UCLA -17 at DraftKings against Colorado. I'm not sure why this line is so low outside of the fact that we've seen UCLA's offense with Dante Moore previously, like struggle to, I guess, be consistent, I guess is the best way to say it. But they went to Garbers last week, and we saw this UCLA offense really start to cook a little bit. But more importantly, Colorado's defense makes every offense look like a world beater. Like so to some pretty mediocre to bad offensives, they've allowed them to put up 20 plus points against them. But then on the flip side of that, you're looking at this UCLA defense that is number one in EPA per play this season, and they have one of the most fierce pass rushers in the country. I've expressed concern about Colorado's offensive line the entire year. And we saw what Oregon did to Shedeur Sanders to disrupt him, and it was get pressure on him like quickly so he couldn't even make the quick throws in that offense. And if he did, it was for like 1 or 2 yards. I think we see that, but even like more, I guess amplified is the right word, more amplified against this UCLA front, which I think is better than Oregon's. And I think UCLA's offense with Garbers, I think they're energized enough by that move and playing against a pretty piss poor defense that they're able to win this game by 3 scores pretty comfortably.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. I bet UCLA as well. I think slaughter. UCLA grades out as the number 1 pass rush in the entire country.
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders has been sacked more than any other quarterback in the country. How in the world is he going to stay standing in this one? I think they fall behind early, and similar to what we saw against Oregon, like Deion kind of just like punts the game away. Turtles just kind of moves on.
Just protects the guys that he has healthy still. Like I think that's what we see. Yeah, absolutely.
I think UCLA, and not that I think Garbers is so special, but I think he knows how to run this offense. He's been there for, I think this is his 3rd year or 4th year. I think he knows, get the ball in the hands of J. Michael Sturdivant, hand the ball off to Carson Steele, keep this thing moving. I mean, they showed no 42-7 against Stanford. That game was over from the jump.
Oh, yeah. That was ugly.
I know, like, we make fun of Colorado. They blew that 29-0 lead. That being said, like, Colorado's closer to Stanford. That's like an apt comparison based on how those teams are constructed. Colorado obviously has like a higher upside on offense, but I just think UCLA is going to be able to cook in this one. I think 17 for sure. They can win this one with margin. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Mine, Tennessee, Kentucky under 51.5. I kind of like the home dog in this one, but I'm going to lean towards the under. We're going to try again with Tennessee under after last week and burned us. I just don't trust either offense.
No.
Devin Leary, something clearly isn't right with the shoulder off the season-ending surgery. He's only completing 54% of his passes. Kentucky really hasn't been able to generate explosives outside of Ray Davis on the ground. We spoke ad nauseum last week about Tennessee's poorest pass game. This is a team bottom 40 EPA per pass, passing game grade. There's really nothing going on here. Joe Milton still completing less than 25% of his deep throws this season. So I think both defenses control the game. I think this is an absolute grind with inept quarterback play on both sides. And you know what? Shout out to Tennessee's defense. They have been very impressive all season long, especially on the defensive line. Really shut down the Alabama ground game a ton. Alabama needed like some motion jet sweep type actions to really get the run game going. Up the middle was not working. I think Kentucky's going to struggle to move the ball. And I think Tennessee's going to stall out. So give me under 51.5 Tennessee, Kentucky.
Absolutely in love with this play. This is one of those, you got your pick in first, and I was like, okay, there's other games on the primetime slate. I'll go somewhere else, but I had this one as well. You look at Kentucky and their offense with the way Leary has struggled this season, and if Ray Davis isn't moving the ball well, Kentucky has a real problem scoring. And we, like you just said, our Tennessee's run defense is top like 30 in the country in terms of EPA per play against the run. So I just think that Kentucky's going to have a real hard time moving the ball. I think Tennessee is always going to have a hard time moving the ball as long as Joe Milton's their quarterback. So I think 51.5 is way too high a total for this game.
Completely agree. All right, let's talk some upset picks here. We're both going out west, so this is like late night window. We're going to be up sweating these ones. So upset pick. Who do you think is live to spring one on Saturday night?
Oh, I think it's the most live upset pick for the end of the season. The Arizona Wildcats hosting the Oregon State Beavers this week. Reed, do you want to take a guess who the number 8 team in offensive success rate is this season? It's the Arizona Wildcats.
I was gonna guess it was Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this team is being extremely underrated because of how inconsistent and kind of all over the place they were early in the season. But specifically since they put Fafita in at quarterback, this offense has been not just like explosive, but balanced. Like they're running the ball at a top 10 rate. They're passing the ball at a top 10 rate. And like Oregon State's defense, based on like previous years, there's a misconception that it's a hard-nosed defense. This defense is graded out pretty poorly this season. You can put up points on them. Like you look at like the UCLA game when I think they ended up winning 36-24 into that game. That was turnover based on Dante Moore. Fafita has been very careful with the ball, and I don't think they're going to give these opportunities. And honestly, Arizona's defense has actually been better than we kind of realize, or most people tend to realize. And as much improvement as DJU has shown this season, I don't think that he is the type of consistent force that it will take to go on the road and get into a shootout, which I think Arizona might get this game into. And so getting 3.5 points at home against a flawed Oregon State team and an Arizona team that is trending nowhere but up, I like the upset pick here.
I played the over in this one because I think both kind of the same line of thinking. I think that both offenses are going to cook. I think a similar script, though, to when Oregon State lost at Washington State. I think it's like a similar type matchup where Oregon State struggles to get any sort of stops, and it's going to come down to DJU making one mistake, missing one throw down the field when he needs it, and then Oregon State just falls behind and they can't get enough stops to stay in the game. So I completely agree with you on the Arizona side. That would be the way I'd play it. I played the over, though, myself. My pick, team I was high on going into the year. They've looked good so far. Big test here. Got to have it. UNLV plus 7.5 against Fresno State. I think they could win this game outright. Fresno State, both teams have played pretty limited schedules. UNLV obviously played Michigan, but outside of that, they haven't really played anybody. But Fresno hasn't really played anybody either. And the two times they played decent rush offenses, Wyoming and Utah State. Fresno State won at Utah State. I know you had a pick in that one. I know Fresno State won, but Utah State outgained them pretty convincingly. Outgained them 7.1 to 5.6 yards per play. Wyoming won at home with a ground-based attack. We're able to slow the game down. UNLV doesn't play the same way, but UNLV could attack on the ground. So Fresno State team, bottom 15 in tackling grade. And that's not – this is an explosive UNLV offense. Run a go-go offense with new OC Brennan Marion. They went to the freshman quarterback, Mavia. A lot of ground game here. So it's going to be, can Fresno State get the stops on the ground to really hold on here? I'm a little concerned that they can. I know it's a road game for UNLV and, freshman quarterback, maybe things go sideways. But because they pass at a bottom 20 rate, I feel like that kind of negates some of the pressure that he's going to be under. And we also saw, though, big game last week against Colorado State at home, needs to rally. They kind of let the kid spin a little bit, pass for over 300 yards in his first game, no turnovers. So maybe this is like the UNLV team trending up. I don't see much of a separation here between these two ball clubs to make Fresno State a touchdown favorite. I know that maybe they expect Mikey Keene to come back and return to form and all that. But again, Fresno State's resume just doesn't scream like overwhelming favorite against a good UNLV team. UNLV top 10 in turnovers generated, struggle against the pass, they struggle to defend explosive plays at times, but Fresno hasn't been all that explosive. They really struggled stopping defensive pressure. They're outside the top 100 in sacks allowed and yards per carry. So the offensive line's a bit suspect. I don't think Fresno State's going to be able to pull away and win with margin this one. And I think UNLV is live for an upset. I think there's a chance that you're getting like the better team at a huge price.
I don't know if I would go as far as outright. I respect you putting your, gumption out there with that. But I will say that the 7.5 number, I don't know where they're getting that, because when you look at the numbers, the underlying numbers, success rate, EPA per play, that type of stuff, these two teams are pretty damn evenly matched. Like they're very much on par. And so you're giving Fresno more than a touchdown of cushion with this line. I don't like that. And I love your pick on that side because I just think it's just a line that's too high.
Yeah. And we'll see. We'll see if UNLV is up to the task. And of course, as we close out every show, we're going to do our Sickos pick. And I got to say, might be the sickest. This might be the sickest one of the year. Last week we did 2 disgusting Big Ten games. We hit both, which is pretty. Don't let that one fly under the radar. This one though is pretty disgusting. So Cody, where are you going with your Sickos pick this week?
Yeah, if you need some peek behind the curtain, I had to check like 3 different books just to find this line. So that's how sick it is. But I'm going Old Dominion team total under 13.5 against James Madison on the road at James Madison. So James Madison is almost definitely going to move to 8-0 after this game. But I'm not touching a line of -20 for JMU, a team that's played a lot of close games, even though they've stayed perfect. But the one thing I'm confident in is that the Dukes are not going to let the Monarchs move the ball a whole lot in this game. JMU ranks second in the country in defensive success rate this year, and now they're matched up at home against an ODU offense that's outside of the top 100 in offensive success rate. They're substantially better running the ball. I think they're 27th in EPA, and they're outside of the top 120 in passing the ball. So this is an ODU team that wants to run the ball. JMU ranks inside the top 10 in terms of rush defense success rate. ODU has one way that they can move the ball, and JMU has proven that they're not just good, they're elite at stopping that one area they're elite in that area defensively is what I'm trying to say. And I just don't think that ODU is going to have a chance to move the ball. I'm not saying James Madison's going to put up a huge total, but I know that Old Dominion, with the way this offense is constructed against this defense playing on the road, is not going to be able to get 2 touchdowns.
I had Old Dominion under win total. They went over last week. I still don't know how. They're terrible. And James Madison, they're the best group of 5 team this year.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they could make a bowl. They're a wagon. I think, yeah, absolutely. This defense is suffocating. I've watched them a handful of times. Jordan McLeod's been playing really well on offense. That are relevant to this bet, but yeah, the defense is absolutely suffocating. I think they might blank Old Dominion, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So, and I mean, you know what? Even if they get a garbage time score, under still hits. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I like this one quite a bit, especially like when you get in close. JMU is just absolutely nails. What's their JMU? They are inside the red zone. If I could pull this up really fast. JMU. Nah, not as good as I thought. But I thought it would be better. But they're only allowing touchdown on 60% of plays, right around the national average. But like you had mentioned, they're the number 1 rush defense in the entire country. So I think they'll be okay. All right. My Sickos pick. I'm going to take New Mexico +1 against Nevada. I have absolutely no idea why Nevada is favored against New Mexico. I make New Mexico about a 4-point favorite. Not saying New Mexico is good by any means. Not saying they're going to do much. But without a doubt, New Mexico has the best unit on the field, and that is their offense, led by Dylan Hopkins and Brian Vincent, both coming from UAB, the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. New Mexico should move the ball at will against Nevada, a team that is bottom 10 in EPA per play allowed. On offense, they are 95th in EPA per play. I think this is just going to trust the better team. I don't see much home field advantage. Maybe it's because Nevada beat San Diego State 6-0 last week. They're getting a little bit of credit. That being said, I don't see how Nevada, if they're going to stop a pretty strong New Mexico offense, how is Nevada keeping pace? Go look at New Mexico's box scores. I know that they've been privy to getting, letting up a ton of points, but if you go through who they've played this year, especially like competition, like throughout the Texas A&M game in the opener and the FCS opponent, lose 27-17 at home to New Mexico State. Rivalry game in New Mexico State has won 5 in a row, so maybe that loss is aging well. Then they go to UMass and put up 34 and win. They put up 26 against Wyoming. I believe that's one of the highest point totals that Wyoming has allowed. They lose 52-24 to San Jose State. That being said, I believe it was a tie game at half in that one, and then things just went absolutely sideways. Again, though, Nevada doesn't have big playability. They're not getting to 52 points. Hawaii, I watched part of that game last week. New Mexico was going up and down the field, 142-21. New Mexico's better. New Mexico's a better team. There's no home field advantage here. There's no nothing. New Mexico's going to win this game outright. Nevada, congrats on your first win, winning 6-0 against a hapless San Diego State team. Later, you're probably not going to win a game the rest of the year. Give me the Lobos.
Yeah, Nevada shouldn't be favored against any FBS football team. That's just the point blank
That's
period.
it.
Like that's just what it is. And then
Put some respect on the Lobos name.
and yeah, I mean, they're an hour and a half down the road. Like that's my boys down there, you know? But you look at that San Diego State game, which I'm supposing is where this line is coming from for Nevada to be favored. San Diego State looks like a team that has quit. Like they're not playing. Like
and it's
they're
not like
on
they
quit
looked at
watch.
it. It's not like they look so good either. They won 6-0.
Yeah, like it's not
Like it's
this
not
lot.
like if Nevada put up like 35 and like they were cooking, like maybe they stumbled onto something and had a breakout game on offense. Sure, they won 6-0, Cody.
6-0. I mean, like, let me put it this way. When I looked at the doc with our picks on it, I thought you had made a typo because I hadn't looked at the line for this game and I thought it was New Mexico -1. And I was like, oh, that's a little low. Yeah. And then it's +1. Are you kidding me?
This is my favorite bet of all the ones we did this week. Logos.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
+1. Also late night. I'm gonna be up sweating a bunch of bets at 10:30. I have a busy 10:30 window.
We could go 1 and 5 apiece as long as we hit the Sickos pick. That's all that matters. Like, who cares?
All right, so we capped off with the Sickos pick. Why don't you recap all the picks we did, and then we'll get out of here.
For sure. So, favorite total, I went BYU Texas under 50.5. Georgia Florida. Georgia first half -7.5. Oregon Utah, have the Oregon team total under 28.5 and a little bit of a sparring match with you. Primetime pick, I have UCLA -17 against Colorado. Upset pick, give me Arizona, Noah Fafita to upset Oregon State. They're +3.5. And then Sickos pick, Old Dominion team total under 13.5, baby.
There's Cody's picks. My picks, I took the West Virginia UCF over 59. The Georgia Florida over 46.5. Sorry. The Oregon Utah team total over 28.5 for Oregon. Tennessee Kentucky under 51.5. Took UNLV +7.5 against Fresno State, and New Mexico +1 against the Lobos. Cody, great show, my guy. Always appreciate you joining me and appreciate all you joining us. Again, if you are signing up for DraftKings, make sure you use the code STB. You bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets, and you get no sweat same game parlays every single day for the rest of the football season. If you want to learn more about it and see if you qualify, check out the episode description below for the full terms of the offer. Cody, good luck on your picks. Let's see if who will win that head-to-head one, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday, week 10. How are we already here?
It's wild, man, but good luck to you as well, and I'll see you next week.